All right, everybody. This week we have a really awesome episode. I am interviewing myself. Today will be a solo cast, and in today's solo cast, I will be talking about why I even wanted to create this podcast, the Silicon Valley to Spirituality podcast. So, without further ado, let's get started with the podcast. All right. That was really weird to do because usually I'm introducing someone, but it's just me today. This is Seibo. So I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. And today's podcast is really to talk about why I even started the podcast. So, if you are familiar with me and you've known me for more than the last 3 years, you will know that I am a completely different person. Prior to 2021, I was very much motivated to become the Steve Jobs of the cannabis industry. I wanted to produce the iPhone of the cannabis industry, make the best vaporizers that are out there. And I ended up fizzling out, burning out in 2021. And in 2021, a lot of really interesting things happened. COVID happened, right? COVID happened in 2020. My father ended up passing away. For those that don't know, I think this is the first time I'm saying this publicly, but I was asked to leave the company that I founded. And, when you start thinking about all those events, 2020, COVID, my father passing away, my own self being removed from my own company. Sorry, that was kind of weird to say. But being removed from my own company, these were three major things that happened in probably just 6 months or so, and really kind of just shifted and changed me as a person. I would say that the major shift was that I went from I wouldn't say I was an atheist, but if someone bet me and said, gun to my head, your kid's life depends on this, are you a believer that there is heaven, or do you think we just become earthworm food? I probably would have said, I think we become earthworm food. All right. And so this is not to say that I didn't believe that there was something greater than myself. I wanted to believe, but, my rational, logical mind just said that, yeah, when we die, we just become earthworm food. And, I haven't really seen too many examples of people that have died that have come back from death to let us know what it was like. But I have seen many people die and just be buried, and I never heard from them. So, I would say that one of the biggest changes that happened was it was actually June 30th of 2020. June 30th of 2020, I had just done a pretty big psilocybin journey. I believe it was between 7 and 8 grams, maybe 7.5 grams. I can't remember, but it was like more than 2/8 together. So I took that, and what was interesting was during the plant medicine experience, or I guess fungi experience, I think, mushrooms are fungi, not plants. Yep. During the fungi experience, I had this vision. I had this vision that I was going to step down from running my company and become a coach. And so the only reference point I had for coaching was Tony Robbins. And so the day after I had the psilocybin experience, I was asked by my wife, my better half, if I would be open to do a 90-minute meditation. And I said, wow, not really. I don't want to spend 90 minutes meditating. But she said, this is from Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's done some amazing work. I wasn't too experienced with Dr. Joe Dispenza at that point, but I was very much a type of person that if someone told me that you can't do this or this is going to be hard, I would want to prove them wrong. So immediately my wife knew how to get me motivated. She was like, I bet you can't do it. And I was like, I could definitely sit for 90 minutes. And so as we sat down to do the meditation, about like 20 minutes in, my foot started falling asleep. And I was like, oh man, we have probably 70 minutes to go and my foot is already falling asleep. My lower back is hurting, but I opened up my eyes and I saw my wife just sitting there. She looked very peaceful. She looked like she was enjoying herself. So I shut my eyes and just tried to really block out any physical pain that I had. and just really get back into the meditative state. And about 45 minutes in, I started to have this same vision that I had on the mushroom journey, which was that I was going to step down and become a coach. And so this actually kind of freaked me out because it wasn't like I heard it with my ears or saw it with my eyes. It was just like something that I could see with my mind's eye. It was like a voice that I could hear, but the voice wasn't coming from like my ear canal. It was just something that I could hear in my head. And at that point, we had done a joint venture with another company, and we went from like a 6-figure to a 7-figure to a 8-figure company in just a few years. And so getting this news when things were finally starting to turn around professionally for me was very jarring. It was actually something that upset me. I wasn't like excited, like, hey, I'm going to step down and become a coach. I was like really thinking like, wow, what timing? Why would this come at this point in my life? And so the meditation finished. And after the meditation finished, my wife, her name is Yen, asked me, like, what did you think about the meditation? And I disclosed to her that the meditation was good, but I think I still have some psilocybin in my system because I had encountered the same kind of spirit or entity that I had encountered during the mushroom trip, but this time during the meditation. So I told her, like, I think I must have some psilocin still left in my system, and, the meditation just activated it. And she responded by saying that she had the exact same vision. And so when she said that, I had this sense of ease come over my body. I started realizing like, okay, maybe I wasn't just imagining things. Maybe there was something even greater than this that was happening to me. And so as that experience went through my body, it really started making me kind of open up to the idea of a post-cannabis life. All right. So this was June 30th of 2020. And on July 1st, I saw a video on YouTube. It was a YouTube video of this girl, Vanessa Lau. Vanessa Lau is an Asian woman from Canada, and she went from being a barista to a millionaire within a year. And so as I watched her video, she talked about her process, her framework for how she went from a barista to coaching people to having a multi-million-dollar business. And she gave me the framework for how to start a coaching business. And then by September 1st, 2 months later, so this was June 30th, I bought it on July 1st. So after 2 months of going through her course, I started coaching people on September 1st. I got my first client September 1st. And I instantly fell in love with coaching. I really loved helping people. I felt like I was helping people through creating different herbal delivery systems for cannabis that would allow them to enjoy their cannabis without having to get all the tar carcinogens and all the stuff that you really don't want in your lungs. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of my job, but I really came alive when it came to coaching, being able to talk about different mental models, different ways to heal yourself. It was very, very intoxicating and really brought me alive. And by February of 2021, I had built up a book of business that was big enough that gave me the confidence that I could actually step away from running my company. Now, I didn't completely step away. I actually still had a little bit of fear. So I said, hey, I want to step down, but I would like to stay on as the chief product officer of our company. Our investors agreed that that would be a good idea, and we got a new CEO. And so over the next few months, I was working with our new CEO, and in May of 2021, a few months later, the new CEO asked me to leave the company. And of course, my pride was hurt. This was a company that I founded. And basically, I was told that I was being disruptive, that I wasn't supporting executive decisions. And, it doesn't really matter. We don't really need to get into that. But I obviously did not feel that that's what I was doing, but I also felt that if the new CEO, if this would allow him to feel more comfortable about running the company, feel more like the leader, then of course I was willing to step aside because I am also one of the biggest investors in my own company. And if that is what would allow him to run the company, as optimally as he wanted, then, I was willing to put aside my pride and to step away. And so I stepped away in May and became a full-time coach at that time. And never mind, as I was coaching, I had a whole bunch of different coaches myself. I had a meditation coach. I even had a cannabis coach, if you could believe it or not. I had a coach that helped me with my emotional intelligence. And so I was learning a bunch of new modalities as I was coaching people. And I started off as an executive coach. And what I started realizing was being an executive coach was fulfilling to me, but teaching people how to make more money, it wasn't quite as fulfilling because I realized that I was helping them make more money, but they didn't seem like they were getting any happier, right? Their finances were increasing, but their personal joy wasn't increasing. So I decided to pivot. And instead of being an executive coach, I started coaching people on mindset. Then I went through the same process of realizing, okay, hey, I could switch people's mindsets and they could start achieving and accomplishing things. But even achieving and accomplishing things didn't really seem to make them happier. So I wanted to focus on emotional intelligence. And when I started focusing on emotional intelligence, I started saying, okay, finally, I'm starting to see people becoming happier now. And as I started seeing that, my own spiritual growth started to expand quite a bit. I had, ever since June 30th of 2020, I started meditating 90 minutes a day. And as I started meditating, I started encountering, a lot of those entities that I said that I was familiar with because I've done so many psychedelics, LSD, DMT, psilocybin, all sorts of different psychedelics. So I was familiar with these different types of entities that I had access to. But I also kind of feared, like, is my brain chemistry, is there something going on with my head? And, I had a lot of fear, but I noticed that a lot of these voices, a lot of these entities that I was accessing were like very warm, very loving, very encouraging. Like, Seibo, you could be a great coach. Seibo, you don't have to just be a business coach. You could coach people on emotional intelligence. You could even coach them on spirituality, and spirituality was definitely one of those things that I never thought I would be coaching people on. As I said, I identified as like an atheist / optimistic agnostic, but to be someone that said, hey, I believe in God, that was definitely something that was very uncomfortable for me. But as I started to cultivate my meditation practice and started to get these downloads of information, I started sharing a lot of the information that I was getting with my friends that were more spiritual than myself, or my friends that had a lot of knowledge in different religions like Hinduism, being a Muslim, Catholicism, Christianity, Judaism, like I had access to all of these types of people. So as I started sharing a lot of these ideas that were coming to me through my meditations, they would tell me, well, in Hinduism, it's called this, or in the Kabbalah, it's referred to as that, or in Christianity, it's this. And I started going, wow, this is super duper interesting that a lot of this knowledge that I am being exposed to is being communicated in a different way through all of these various religions. And so that in itself made me like so empowered to learn more about spirituality, to really focus my time on spirituality. So I remember the date, June 14th of 2021. So about a month after I was asked to leave my own company, a good friend of mine, CK from LA, came and visited me. And CK, we call him the Noble Warrior. He has a PhD in biomedical engineering, but he's very open spiritually as well. And he told me to go visit him in Colfax. And so I drove up to Colfax, and on our way to Colfax, we drove by Sacramento, and my wife and I, we really loved this Sacramento Sacramento area. And so I believe that was June 14th of 2021, either June 14th or June 16th. My memory is a little bit hazy, but we loved it so much that by July 30th, we had already put our house on the market and sold it. It sold on the first weekend. And then by October 21st, we were living in the house that I'm broadcasting from right now. And so many of my friends thought, why did you move away? Did you plan this? And we told them, no, we didn't plan it. We just followed our intuition. And following my intuition was one of those things that every time I meditated, I would get a download to continue to follow my intuition and to make sure that that I was guided, not by my logic and rationality and the pros and cons list that I would always make when I was making a decision, but to really tap into the feeling, to tap into the emotion, to tap into and trust my intuition. And so, well, what I could tell you is moving here has been the best move of our life. And I'm just explaining this because, this is kind of like why I wanted to create this podcast where I talked about, being an entrepreneur, wanting to raise money, wanting to create another unicorn, and why all of a sudden I'm talking about spirituality and being so open about it. And I used to criticize spirituality and religion quite a bit. I used to think like this was just for people that had given up on life, or they're too stupid to think about their own moral code, so they just adopt a religion's morals. And the people that were into crystals or chakras, these were just people that were delusional and not a part of reality. And what I actually found as I got deeper and deeper into my spiritual practice was that there are things that my five senses could pick up on, but there are so many things out there that are not perceivable by my five senses. And in one of my meditations, it told me to look into quantum physics. And so I started studying quantum physics to the best of my ability. A lot of the languaging, a lot of the concepts were outside of my core competency or out of my knowledge base. But, a few principles stood out, like superposition, wave-particle duality, quantum entanglement. And as I started learning about these principles and these theories of quantum physics, I started remembering like some of the things that I learned in Catholic school about God being everywhere all at once. And, that really reminded me of superposition. And I remember one time someone told me that, light is just the speed limit of the physical universe, but it's not the speed limit on higher realms of consciousness. And quantum entanglement also showed that there is something that connects us, that can connect us faster than the speed of light. So as I started studying quantum physics, I started overlaying it with some of the spiritual knowledge that I had picked up on in the past or through my conversations with friends, and started realizing, wow, quantum physics is the modern language to explain metaphysical ideas. And if someone was able to explain spirituality to me in the language of quantum physics, I probably would have opened up a lot more quickly to these concepts and probably wouldn't require 7 grams of mushrooms and 90 minutes of meditating every day to come to this conclusion. But, be that as it may, I took the path that I was supposed to take, and it happened to be the best path for me possible. So this kind of arrives me, at where we're at today, which is as I expanded spiritually and started realizing that we are the manifestors of our reality, as I started to become more adept and experienced at explaining these concepts through the lens of quantum physics, I started realizing that I am a world bridger. I was brought here to help people see that there is so much more to reality than just the things that we are focusing on. Our jobs, our cars, our houses, our vacations, things of that nature. And, it really kind of like freed me from the world that we are currently living in, or that I was living in, where, my self-worth was connected to, my achievements in life. And hold on real. All right. Through the magic of editing, we are back. So I was talking about how my self-worth was connected to my achievements in life, and really seeing that there was deeper truths, more experiences, more levels of consciousness that I could experience in order to have a more fulfilling and purpose driven life. And so as I began on this path, I started realizing that, just like mixed martial arts, in mixed martial arts, typically the base foundation is jujitsu, wrestling, and some sort of striking background. And if you have those three, you could be a great mixed martial artist. But what we've all found in mixed martial arts is, any combination of these types of modalities, it doesn't have to specifically be kickboxing or boxing and jujitsu and wrestling. As long as you have a toolkit that allows you to do stand up as well as fight on the ground, you'll be doing okay. And that's what I also saw in my meditations, was that there are many paths to a successful, purpose-driven, fulfilling life, but most of us have a very specific definition of what a purpose-driven and happy life would be like. And as we limit ourselves in those definitions, so many of us, because those definitions were not ones that we defined, these definitions were just given to us by, our teachers, our parents, by society, by the culture scape, that many times when we're not having fun playing by these rules, or we're not able to be successful with the current rule set of society, then we label ourselves a failure. Or even worse, if you're like me, and you were able to somehow manage to succeed in these rules that are not commiserate with the way you want to live your life, is like when you become a CEO, or when you buy your first home, or when you finally get on like the magazine cover that you wanted to be on, will I feel like that sense of purpose and fulfillment that I thought I would feel? And, after being a part of 6 straight exits, having my own personal success, is that I could tell you without a shadow of a doubt that if you are not in alignment with what you are supposed to do, when you accomplish and achieve things, you are not going to feel any fulfillment when you do it. And I've also had the luxury of coaching 288 people over the last, I guess it's almost 3 years now. Wow. Over the last 2.5, 3 years, is that in 100% of the cases, when they are not in alignment with what they really want to do, when they achieve the things that they want, they either have temporary happiness, a few days, a week, a couple of weeks, or they immediately set another goal that they need to hit, and then they sacrifice their time, their health, their relationships in order to do that. And so I started realizing, wow, how much of my life have I put off? How much of my time have I sacrificed? How much of my relationships have I not focused on in order to hit all of these professional goals that I thought would make me feel whole and complete? And what I came to realize in my deep meditations is wholeness and completeness is not something that you achieve in life. It is a way of being. And if you are not being whole and complete, it is not something that you can achieve your way into. No jobs, no amount of money, no amount of love from other people is going to make you feel whole and complete. You need to realize that you are already whole and complete. And when you are already whole and complete, instead of making decisions that you think will fill an empty cup, or let me just use I language, instead of me thinking that all of my achievements will make me feel more whole and complete, I realized that I needed to know that I was already whole and complete just because of my existence on this universal level. All that is cannot be all that is without me, without you, without all of you guys listening, right? We are all perfectly imperfect, or imperfectly perfect, however you want to put it, but we are all here to play our cosmic role, and wherever we are at is exactly where we should be. And one of my favorite concepts is to talk about, things aren't happening to me, bad things aren't happening to me, good things aren't happening to me. Things are happening for me, for my greatest good, for my ability to grow and become a better person. Like, every challenge could be perceived as a problem or a gift. And if you are spiritually adept at playing this game, then there is literally no type of suffering that you will go through in this life, because you understand that every challenge, every piece of resistance in front of you is there to help you expand and grow your consciousness. And your consciousness can be utilized for your personal life, your professional life, your spiritual life. So however your consciousness expands, it is always going to be for your greatest good. Now, when you expand your consciousness, does life just become easy? Do you no longer have problems? Do you no longer see all the challenges of the world? I've actually found it to be the exact opposite. As my consciousness expanded, I started seeing more of like the negativity of the world, more judgment, more fear, more self-loathing from other people. But I also realized that like this is the dualistic nature of 3D space-time, is that how could we have happiness if we've never experienced joy, right? How could we feel courageous if we've never experienced fear? So what we would call negative emotions, negative experiences, are actually the balance point that allows us to truly enjoy the physical experience that we are having. So this is just a kind of short version of like why I wanted to start this podcast and why I think it's so important, because I come from two very different worlds. I come from a entrepreneurial founders world where it's all about your accomplishments, your achievements. It's all about using data to make the best decision possible. It's about being more efficient. It's about growing revenue, and if your revenue hasn't grown from quarter to quarter, you're just a failure and a fuck up, right? Like I came from that world, right? And then so when I got into spirituality, I really loved it. I started seeing people that understood that we manifest our own reality, why frequency and vibration is so important. But I also realized like there's a lot of like ultra spiritual people that are just like straight up delusional, like it's not to say like what they believe is wrong, but the way that they interpret the information, they start isolating themselves from society. They start looking down on people that want material things. They start wanting to stay away from people with low vibes. And then they start like creating their own little echo chamber of like ultra spiritual people that are in a high frequency, that know that all of physical reality is just an illusion. So there's no need to get stressed out. There's no need to, get triggered. There's no need to do anything other than to meditate. And what I found is like both sides are pretty imbalanced, And what was shown to me in my meditation is that, yes, we are infinite, eternal, spiritual beings, but we chose to incarnate into physical reality. And by choosing to incarnate into physical reality, it wasn't to live a spiritual life. It was to do physical things. And so what I have seen in my meditations was that there are different levels of reality. All right, you may have heard about 3D, 4D, 5D. So string theory allows for up to 13 dimensions. We live in 3 dimensions, height, length, and width. We experience what they would call the 4th dimension of time linearly. But if you think about dimensions as geometry, then 2D is like a square, 3D is like a cube, and 4D is a hypercube. Now, we cannot picture a hypercube in our mind because our senses and our consciousness is all set up for 3D. But we do know that 4-dimensional objects, 5-dimensional objects, 6-dimensional objects all exist. We just don't have the ability to interact with them. Or if you are not spiritually opened up, you have zero access to these higher dimensional realities. But as you open up spiritually, these new realities become accessible to you. So this is why I started this podcast. Was I know that I have the business background. I've been in Forbes. I've spoken at South by Southwest. I've been a part of an 8-figure business. I've had I've been a part of 5 successful exits. So I know that, from a kind of qualifications point of view, like a lot of people, would look at my resume and have trust in me, right? But I also have another side of me that is very open spiritually. And I know that if some hippie off the street was telling me, man, there's only one thing, man, there's only vibes in this world, man, and we are just all different densities of these vibes, it would be very hard for me to take in that information. So what I realized was part of my purpose here is to help open up people that are based in logic and rationality, that look at the universe from a physicalist, reductionist point of view, to think that you could understand everything in the universe just by breaking things down into the atomic unit. And if you can break things down into the atomic unit and reassemble it, then you have some good idea of how the universe or how consciousness works. And what I was shown was, yeah, that's good and all to understand all of that, but that's not the way that you understand consciousness. And only certain levels of consciousness, if you want to get to these higher levels, you cannot access them through your mind. You have to access them through your heart, through your feeling, through your intuition. And so the purpose of this podcast is to interview other people that have just killed it in the 3D space-time world, but are now focusing a lot of their time on higher dimensional realities. So if you think about Everything Everywhere All at Once, what was even the point of the title of that movie? Well, it's to talk about everything that has ever happened, everything that will ever happen is all happening simultaneously in the present moment across infinite parallel realities. And depending on the frequency of our brain or where we want to focus on, that is the reality that we experience. And I could go into like wave particle duality and how waves are just infinite possibilities. And the second that we focus our consciousness on a wave, the wave collapses into a single point of particle in space-time. But, I think that's just kind of just too much technical jargon. But the idea here is that what we believe, where we focus on, or what we focus on, how we focus on it, what type of energy we bring into it absolutely affects the type of reality that we manifest. And so if you are just someone that thinks you have to hustle and grind and you will get what you want, you will probably be able to accomplish some things. But we also know people that have sacrificed 60, 70, 80 hours of their life trying to do everything in their power possible to be successful and still not get any success. Then we have people that we know that trip over a crack on the sidewalk and then find $100 bill and things just seem to flow so easy to them. What's the difference between these two people? Well, it's the energy that they're bringing in to the reality that they are experiencing. All right, so that's kind of the metaphysical explanation, but even on a practical, tactical level, from a mindset point of view is, hey, if you think of everything's going to be the worst thing that is going to happen to you, when these things happen to you, you're probably going to experience them very negatively. And the inverse is true. If you think like all of these things that are happening to you is going to be something positive, when they start happening to you, you're going to have a positive experience. So whether you think about it on the metaphysical level or on a more practical, tactical, earth-grounded level, well, it's still going to benefit your life. And so in my last podcast, I interviewed Orist. Orist was talking about bending time, telepathy, things of that nature. And yeah, I'm here to say like all of these things are possible. Now, whether or not you'll be able to do that in this lifetime, well, it all depends on what type of themes that you are here to explore. So I'm here to explore unconditional love and worthiness for myself. And so flying, astral projection, teleporting, these aren't things that are relevant to the themes that I'm exploring in my life. But if they are relevant to your life, absolutely, these are things that you could cultivate. I know it sounds like mumbo jumbo, but the CIA had done numerous studies on astral projection, remote viewing, teleportation, things of that nature. You could see the unclassified documents. It's like 170 pages, but these are things that they experimented on, and they absolutely came away with the conclusion that all of these things are possible, which makes you think, like, what is the government doing if they've studied these things, and how are they using them? Is it for our greater good? Is this a net positive for society? And I'm not going to jump into that right now. I'll save this for some future discussions, but this is just to say that I want everyone listening, and I believe if you're watching a podcast, the Silicon Valley to Spirituality show, you probably have some openness to these ideas and concepts. But what I could tell you for me is the reason why I'm so confident speaking about them is this isn't just intellectual knowledge for me. This is stuff that I've actually experienced by having a scientific process. And my process is to sit in silence for 90 minutes, to surrender to the universe, and to allow whatever information that needs to flow through me, and then just to communicate that to the people that are watching and listening. So I'm not a professional speaker. I've been to one Toastmasters, but if you just think about, I don't know how long I've been talking now, I don't know, 45 minutes, 30 minutes. Yes, I have used filler words like every so often, but for the most part, I've just been flowing here. And this is a good example of what happens when you could just trust that the universe is going to be presenting you things that are in your highest good. So I just turned on the camera. I didn't have a guest this week, and I just trusted that sharing my story, this was the right time to share the story of the genesis of this podcast, why I'm doing it, how it changed me, and what type of life that I'm living right now. And so I hope this gave you an idea of like my motivations, who I am, why I'm talking about these things. And I truly believe that we can escape the culturescape. And what is the culturescape? Well, I like to think of the culturescape as all the rules that society has imposed on us in order for us to behave a certain way. Now, this is not to say that I'm against the culture or I am against rules of society, because I'm not. I believe that all of these allow us to have some sort of shared experience. We know what is good, what is bad, what is legal, what is illegal, and it gives us a general set of rules for us to interact with each other as we're having this 3D space-time experience. But once you start getting deeper into your spiritual practice, once you start tapping into things that allow you to see outside of the culturescape, then you start realizing, snowflakes, conservatives, Nazis, socialists, iPhone, Android, all of these ideas and concepts are all part of the culturescape, all part of this story that society and the collective consciousness is telling. And when you are able to zoom out, you start realizing, okay, wow, I have a life that is kind of like inside the PS5, and that's the culturescape that I play in. But outside of the PS5, there's a whole other society. There's the programmers, there's the people that made the PS5, there's the people that created all the games. And it showed me that all of reality is fractal. So we might be in the PS5, and then there's people that we perceive that are outside of it, but they're in their own simulation, and there's another fractal, higher dimensional reality, even higher than that, that is doing whatever they do. And the analogy that they showed me, and why it's so hard for us to even think about higher dimensional realities or higher dimensional ways of consciousness, is imagine you're a fish and you get caught by a fisherman. The fisherman reels you in, picks you up, takes the hook out of your mouth, and then throws you back in the water. And all of a sudden, you need to explain to all your fish friends what you saw. You're like, okay, I saw this guy. It looked like he could communicate using words. It looks like they terraformed all of land. They have buildings, they have manufacturers, they have solar energy, right? Like, none of this would make sense to any of your fish friends. So I'm just explaining what these higher dimensional realities from a concept would be like. I'm not saying I've experienced any of them, but just knowing that consciousness is fractal and that there are many frequencies of consciousness. And as you expand your consciousness, you have more access to more of these frequencies, to me was a very, very empowering, freeing concept to understand. And so I just wanted to share it with you. I hope this is planting the seed in your mind to explore your consciousness, to meditate more. I am a believer in mentors in life, but I am not a believer in gurus. I believe that we are all our own personal guru. You know what is best for you. I could give you some advice to help you think through what is best for you, but ultimately, you know what is best for you. And that's why moving from Silicon Valley to spirituality had benefited me so much in my life. And I really hope that you enjoyed this podcast. I hope that you got a lot out of it. If you did, smash the like button, subscribe to my channel, share this with a friend, because I do believe that as we shift from 3D to 4D to 5D, all we need to do is expand our consciousness. As we start expanding our consciousness, and that we could see that there is truth in everything, but just that some things are truer than others depending on the context, instead of Democrat versus conservative, or iOS versus Android, or Sega versus Nintendo, or whatever tribalistic way that you like to divide people up, you start seeing that none of this is necessary. And what is most important is showing love to each other, showing love to yourself, living in a way that is commiserate with the 3D physical space-time experience that you signed up for. And if you imagine a world where everyone could see multiple truths at the same time, you'll start seeing that pro-vax, anti-mask, pro-mask, anti-mask, all of these things were stories and frameworks that our minds created in order for us to have a specific experience. And I probably shouldn't end it with that, because I know these are super polarizing topics. But for me, moving from San Francisco to a rural area, I lived in the most progressive area where everyone was getting multiple vaccines, wearing multiple masks. If you weren't wearing a mask, you were looked down upon. And now I live in an area where no one wears masks. Everyone has the exact opposite beliefs. But guess what? Whether you are a pro-mask, pro-vax, or anti-mask, anti-vax, one thing is for sure. Nobody wanted to see more people die. Everybody wanted more community, and everyone wanted a better life for themselves. So if you could start zooming out and get out of the culturescape, out of the 3D space-time trap that we all believe we're in, and really start enjoying this as like a physical video game that we get to play in, that we get to enjoy, you will start seeing that it will shift your perception of reality. And in my world, it's not just a perception of reality, it's actually you're shifting to a different reality that has things that are more in alignment with your native frequency. You'll start seeing that, yeah, this is why they say we are like God. We have this ability to construct the reality that we want. All right. And so I could already hear it. Well, hey, if we're constructing a reality, why do bad things happen to me? Why are there children being sex trafficked? Blah, 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 all these things. Well, think about it this way. If you want to be the hero in your own life, how can you be a hero if there are no villains? So you have so many things that you could focus on to make better. And so in the story of life, in the Maya of life, in the illusion of life, in the matrix of life, just understand that there are, of course, negative things out there. But these things are put there so that you could figure out, hey, is this important enough for me to change? Is this going to give me purpose in my life? And you don't have to save the world. You just have to pick one thing that is in most alignment with what you want to do, and just focus on that. All right, everyone, that is the SOLOcast from this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week, I'll have another life coach on that will talk about different mental models to help you live a better life. But I just wanted to give you the genesis of the story of how the Silicon Valley to Spirituality show was created. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, share it with a friend if you liked it. Drop me a comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff that other creators say. Please do that for me, and I'll be back next week with another awesome episode. Take care, everyone.